So welcome everyone to Psalms for Life, in which we take a different chapter of Psalms either once a week or once or twice a month, and we explore them in brief with insights and inspiration from Rebbe Nachman of Breslov, as well as our sages and tzaddikim. And today's psalm is Psalm 23. And I would like to thank Esther Elagorovich for sponsoring today's class, and may it be a source of bracha v'hatzlacha for her and her family. Okay, and we have also, somebody asked if we could dedicate the learning Le'alui Nishmas Bilha Bas Devora Avraham. Okay, so Psalm 23 is arguably the most famous psalm. Not only Jews are familiar with this psalm, but the nations of the world are very familiar with this psalm. It speaks to the universal feelings of trust and faith. And I said it in that order specifically, Bitachon and Emunah, rather than the normal Emunah and Bitachon, because this psalm is very much about trusting in Hashem. Now, the psalm, Mizmor LeDavid, it begins as a song of David, King David. The psalm is very personal to David, but it's also personal to each of us. And I want to hark back to the beginning of this whole series where I mentioned that the Psalms were written for many reasons, but specifically as songs for us to sing and find ourselves in. And this psalm is quite easy to do that. So in this psalm, David is actually referring to his flight from King Saul, in which, as we know from previous classes, he was pursued again and again and again. There were many series of events in this pursuit, yet David always relied on Hashem's protection. And also, David expressed his natural kindness, his natural chesed, by refusing many times to kill or capture Shaul when he was able to. And we want to keep that in mind. This psalm is said, says Rashi, to have been composed or received, depending how you view it, when he was in the Judean forest, the forest of Yehuda, called Heret, and it's on the brink of death. He had no food and no drink. And this is what David said. He said, Mizmor LeDavid, Hashem roi lo echsar. A song of David, God is my shepherd, and I will not want, I will not lack. Now, this is how he begins, okay? The use of the word roi, shepherd, is very significant here. David himself, as we all know, had been a shepherd. And we also have to keep in mind that all the Avos were shepherds, and virtually all the Shavatim, all the tribes, were also shepherds. Everybody who grew to greatness in the earlier and some of the later parts of Torah were shepherds. Why a shepherd? Okay, so a shepherd is someone who is building a few qualities. The first quality is the quality of one's sight, one's able to see, which is why the word roi is like a watcher. A shepherd is like a watcher, a seer. Somebody who is able to watch for what? To watch out for people's safety, to watch out that people, or in the case of the shepherds, literally sheep, are in the right place. They're not straying. They're not wandering off. They're not hungry. They're not thirsty. They're not lost. They're not separated from the flock. This is the concept of a shepherd. Here David is saying, Hashem is my shepherd. Okay. We also know that this concept of the shepherd is referred to in Kabbalistic texts, in the Talmud as well, the Raya Mehemna, the faithful shepherd, the shepherd of Emunah. The shepherd of Emunah is something that Rebbe Nachman speaks about. Rebbe Nachman explains that this shepherd of Emunah, this faithful shepherd, is someone that can always be depended on to provide us with our needs, okay? And that is why this psalm is significantly said for two occasions. I'm going to talk about when it's always said on Shabbos. I'll speak about that shortly. The first occasion is when someone is struggling with their bitachon, with their trust in Hashem to provide their livelihood, and also if someone is struggling with an illness, or we want to pray for someone with an illness who needs to have a Refuah Sheleimah, because Hashem will not let us down. He's going to provide for us. He's going to give us exactly what we need at all times. Doesn't mean what we need, by the way, will always be what we want. But generally speaking, Bitachon implies the idea that we can look forward to receiving the needs of our more than our baseline needs with comfort and dignity. So we turn to Hashem. If we don't turn to Hashem, if we don't trust in Hashem, and we trust in other types of supply for whatever we might need, then that will diminish, this is important here, diminish our own ability to rely on Hashem and diminish the flow of abundance and bracha that we could receive if we only trusted in Hashem. Something to keep in mind. We all know it's very easy, especially if you get a paycheck from an employer. It's very easy to begin to think the source of our livelihood, the source of our material comfort, the source of our parnasa, we begin to think that it is us or our employer or the government or this politician or this do-gooder. No, the source is Hashem. And that's who we trust. And by the way, that doesn't mean we don't have gratitude. We always have to show Hakar Satov to the actual agents who supply us with our needs. We must show respect as well. So this idea of trust is so significant. The lamb, the sheep, or the goat, I guess goats are also herded, trust in the shepherd to protect them. There may be other agents out there, like the sheepdog or the beautiful sunshine and rain, which makes the grass grow for the sheep to graze on, but they trust in the shepherd so much that the second the shepherd emits his call, his whistle, his music, because shepherds use music or they use tunes, or special cries, the sheep come running. Okay, so this idea of the faithful shepherd, I want to speak a little bit more. Rebbe Nachman really speaks about this a lot. He explains that this Raya Mehemna, who the commentaries all refer to as Moshe Rabbeinu, really refers to the root tzaddikim, the true tzaddikim, the ones who watch over the Jewish people. For Rebbe Nachman, it's quite interesting because for those of you who were at the Lag BaOmer event, we know that he is said to be the fifth in line from a incarnation of a specific soul root, the soul root of Moshe Rabbeinu, which went to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which went to the Arizal, which went to the Baal Shem Tov, and then to his great-grandson, Rebbe Nachman. And these particular people in our history all had this attribute of shepherd. Rebbe Nachman and Moshe, perhaps most of all. Rebbe Nachman speaks about the role of the tzaddik as a watcher, as a looker, somebody who looks for the good point in the Jewish people. If he's a shaliach tzibur, the shaliach, the leader of the congregation, the one who leads the prayers, he's looking at the good in each person, and he's lifting up their prayers to Hashem, to Hashemayim, with goodness and kindness. This is why we need the tzaddikim in our lives. This psalm, as I mentioned in the beginning, can be viewed a few different ways. One of those ways is a reminder of how much we need the tzaddikim. Now, the Cherner Rav, Rabbi Goldstein of Breslov, we'll talk about him sometime, maybe when we'll cover all the Hasidim of Breslov. He made some commentary on this psalm, and he explains that he more than alludes, he explains that this psalm is also very much not only related to relying on Hashem, trusting in Hashem, but also relating to this idea of connecting to the tzaddikim. Okay, I'm going to continue with the next verse. 1 second, please. Okay. Inos desha yarbitseni alme nuchos yanachaleni. So he causes me to lie down in green or grassy pastures, and he leads me beside calm waters. Now, Rebbe Nachman explains that this verse refers to the true tzaddikim, the true tzaddik, I should say, the tzaddik emes. Hold on 1 second, somebody's signing in. The tzaddik emes, whose mind is always calm and settled, and who no longer has to deal with conflicting thoughts. And he mentions the Zohar HaKodesh, which says the mind of an elder, of a wise person, is still, calm, and tranquil. So here we have this expression of a tzaddik. Again, the psalm is also referring to the tzaddikim, of a tzaddik who is caused by Hashem to lie down, to rest in green pastures. And when he walks or he goes or he rows his boat along calm and still waters. It's a very beautiful, tranquil image, which has appealed to the imagination of people, universal people around the world, because of its beauty. So Rebbe Nachman explains to us that this refers to the tzaddik because the tzaddik no longer has to deal with the kinds of thoughts that plague all of us. What are the thoughts that plague all of us? Yetzer hara creeps in. We have thoughts of doubt in Hashem, God forbid, but people do. We have thoughts of, well, of course I believe in Hashem, but he's making it hard for me. So that's a form of doubt, a weakening of Emunah, a weakening of Bitachon. We have doubts in ourself, which Rebbe Nachman explains is its own form of atheism, its own form of heresy. We don't value ourselves. We don't understand how precious we are to Hashem, how much he loves us. We have conflicting thoughts of urges and desires that are unhealthy, desires for food, for immoral things, desires. We also have conflicting thoughts of jealousy. How come she has? I don't have, she doesn't deserve, why does she have, why don't I have, so on. Why does that person act this way towards me? Why do they hurt me? Why is Hashem allowing this to happen? I'm going over all the things that Rebbe Nachman speaks about, messages to each of us, all these kinds of conflicting thoughts. Okay, some are more philosophical and intellectual, some are more emotional, and some are more physical. And there are many more thoughts about money, like I have to work all the time. If I don't work all the time, I won't have money. Hashem won't provide for me, and so on. And all these conflicting thoughts are no longer the purview of the tzaddik. The tzaddik is calm inside. And because the tzaddik has so much emunah, so much faith, and so much bitachon, and trust in Hashem, and knows his place and knows his purpose, if we want to find this connection with the shepherd, okay, and here speaking as David HaMelech does, Hashem is my shepherd. If we want to find that connection, we come to the tzaddik. And today that means the teachings of the tzaddik, as well as visiting the grave sites of the tzaddikim. Now, next, Nafshi Yeshovev Yancheni V'Maglei Tzedek Laman Shamo. Nafshi Yeshovev. So this is so beautiful. Hashem, he's referring to Hashem, restores my soul, and he leads me along the paths of tzedek, of righteousness, of goodness, of uprightness, for the sake of his name. And again, referring back to the Cherner Rav, he says that it inspires us to ask the question, how does one restore his soul? Okay, we know we have to turn to Hashem, but also he says, by drawing closer, as implied by this verse, to the righteous, to the tzaddikim. So he restores my soul. He leads me on the path of tzedek, of righteousness, for the sake of his name. So when we connect with the tzaddikim, they restore our soul. They show us how to do it because they're showing us how to connect with Hashem. And they are leading us along the path of righteousness. Now, before I go on to more verses, what I'd like to do is to tell you when this psalm is traditionally said. I mentioned at the beginning that it's said for people who are struggling with trust in Hashem for parnasa, and it's also said for people who are ill. A sick person can say it for Refuah Sheleimah, and we can say it for someone who needs a Refuah Sheleimah. Also, we say this particular psalm on Shabbos. It's said, depending on your nusach, on your liturgy, on your particular, whether you daven nusach Sephard or Ashkenaz or something else, there are others. It's said on Friday night, okay. In nusach Sephard, it's usually before Aleinu, but the idea is that it's before the Suda, before the meal. It's also said before Kiddush Rabbah in the daytime. It's said then, and it's said usually, depending again on your nusach, after Askinu Sadusa. And then it's also said on Shalosh Shidduchos, the third meal, and some people have the custom to make a kiddush of some kind on grape juice, whatever, the third meal, some don't. But it's said at Shalosh Shidduchos, some people say it 3 times. Okay, some people say it once. So all 3 meals, in the beginning, it's said a little, in Friday night, said a little bit before, daytime, it said right before, and Shalosh Shidduchos, it said sort of in the middle of the meal, because most people make some kind of kiddush, a minor kiddush, a bracha really on wine. They make it after they've already washed and eaten something. Okay, now, as we think about what we read previously, we can tie it into why we say this so much, this beautiful psalm on Shabbos so much. So I'm going to continue. Gam ki elech begeit salmaves lo'i ra ki ita imadi shiftecha mishantecha hema yenachamuni. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, because you are with me, and your rod and your staff, they comfort me. They give me consolation and comfort. Okay, it's very beautiful. What David is saying here, and remember, he was hiding in the forest from Shaul, so there is a very obvious pshat, a historical pshat for this. But what he's saying here is no matter where I'm walking, and we all walk at some point in the valley of the shadow of death, because we're mortal. No matter where I'm walking, Hashem, I don't fear anything evil because you're with me. Okay, so that part we all understand. But why your rod and your staff, they comfort me? What's a rod and a staff? So there are many commentaries on this, but the really obvious meaning is that even if I'm chastised by you, that's what a rod is. Even if I'm chastised by you, okay, I still receive comfort from you. As a matter of fact, sometimes your chastisement is a comfort. We're saying this on Shabbos. We're saying this 3 times at the third meal. Okay, we're speaking about death. Okay, so what is all of this? So it's really interesting and it's really powerful. This idea that Hashem's chastisement, his correction of us, can be a consolation to us, a comfort. Why? Because it shows that we have a relationship with him. People who don't receive the rod, who don't ever face any corrections, the Talmud tells us, watch out. Every day, a person has to have some kind of correction that might be a form of minor suffering. The Talmud says if you reach into your pocket for one size coin and you pull out a different coin, a lesser coin, that could be your daily suffering, your daily correction. But if everything goes perfectly smoothly, okay, perfectly smoothly, watch out, okay? Watch out for yourself. You're not receiving a personal shepherd experience from Hashem. We say this on Shabbat because Shabbat, especially the third meal, Shabbat is itself a very high level of teshuvah. Okay, that's why it has the same letters as teshuvah. Shabbat and teshuvah have the same letters. Also, it's a time in which we slow down. And the third meal is we sing Mein Olam Haba. We sing, this is a little taste of the world to come. And we are referring to the times of Mashiach and the Geula. It's true. But Olam Haba also refers to the next world, when our journey in the lobby, as Rebbe Nachman calls it, the lobby that is this world, is over and we move into the next world. You see how this all ties in. So this psalm is a form of comfort, and it's if we open our hearts to it, because the truth is, David is a tzaddik. He can say, I fear no evil. But each of us struggle with this. We do fear evil. Okay, we do fear evil. We fear the evil within ourselves. We fear certainly the evil that we see in this world, more and more prevalent as it so happens. Okay, next I want to get through all the verses, then I'll look at your questions. Okay. Yes, so I did see what Dora said. Yes, people do say it at Levias. Some people say it on yard sites. Again, there's a lot of reasons why we say this psalm. I say it every day. I don't know why. I just have my own personal custom. I have several psalms that I say every day in addition to the daily and Tikkun HaKlali and so on, and this is one of them. Okay, next. Let's see, where am I? Okay. Taroch lifanai, shulchan neged zorai, deshanta v'Hashem and roshi kosi. Revaya. Okay. You set out a table in front of me in view of those who are tormenting me, my tormentors. You anointed my head with oil and my cup overflows. So beautiful. Even in English, the psalm is gorgeous. So this idea, you anointed my head with oil, okay, is something that Rebbe Nachman has a very powerful, in-depth lesson about. And I don't have time to go into it here, but I would like to encourage you, if you haven't already bought David Sear's wonderful book, Rebbe Nachman, The Power of Psalms. This is in volume 1, book 1, which has Psalms 1 through 41 in it. There's a second volume. I don't know if this series will ever be completed. I hope it's completed one day. I encourage you to get that. It's published by the Breslov Research Institute. So, and you can read it right in here. And this idea of you anointed my head with oil, Rebbe Nachman explains, he explains that this alludes to a few things. It alludes to kingship and power. And it also alludes to this idea that, that kingship and power, okay, can be a test. It's very interesting. This whole psalm has a subtext. Remember, David is Malchus, he's royalty. But this psalm has a subtext of this idea of the shepherd versus the king. Okay, so many ways to look at this short, little, beautiful parak into Helen. So this idea of the shepherd versus the king. And this idea that before someone can be a king, they have to be a shepherd. Now, Rebbe Nachman says, he always cautions everybody. He told his followers, avoid leadership roles, avoid fame, that stuff. The test of wealth, the test of fame, the test of leadership is so big that most people fail. He says, don't invite it onto yourself. If it chases after you, you have no choice, okay, then it's from Hashem, but don't chase after those things. But if Hashem wants to confer on you, you're first going to be a shepherd. You're going to be alone with only the sheep to watch. Your test will be, do you care? Do you care for those weakest of the flock? Do you truly have the compassion necessary to look out for those who are the most vulnerable, the baby lambs, literally, and the most down and out and downtrodden people? Children also. Children are also weak and vulnerable. Do you look out for children? Do you look out for those in society who struggle? In the Jewish world, thank God we have so many organizations, so many chesed organizations that support people in all kinds of ways. Do you do your part? Very literally, do you do your part? Do you genuinely care? Do you give what you can give, not just financially, but of your time and of your talents? Then, like David, you will be lifted up to some kind of kingship, queenship in our case, something, a role that might be expanded in some way, might even be a leadership role. One of the phenomena of Jewish women is that Jewish women tend to be very driven, not only to take care of their families, but to do good in this world. And we often see that we have so many speakers telling their life stories. Why are they telling their life stories? Not to brag, not to show how great I am, God forbid, but to show how great Hashem is, and to show that they went through periods. We can hear this all the time when we hear Jewish women speaking. They went through periods that Hashem's rod and staff woke them up or consoled them or both. And they were able to then get to the next level of spiritual development in their lives and to give. And so these stories that we hear women tell and that we tell each other and that we tell ourselves are very valuable. They're the story of our own process of coming from shepherd to royalty. Okay, we have the ability to care very deeply as women. We're emotional. So it comes naturally to us, I think. Okay, next. Ach tov v'chesed yirdafuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti beves Hashem la'orech yamim. So this is a prayer. May only goodness and kindness pursue me, chase after me all the days of my life. And I will dwell in the house of Hashem for the length of days, for a long life, a good long time. Length of days also can be referring to Olam Haba as well. So the idea is this a beautiful weaving together of statements of David's personal history, messages to each of us. There are many, many messages in this psalm. Obviously, I was only able to talk about a few of them because it's a short class, as well as a prayer. All this rod and staff that comforted me, I view that as goodness and kindness, but may goodness and kindness stam, fully expressed as goodness and kindness, chase after me. Okay, just as I spoke about, you need to run from anything that's a test of wealth, fame, fortune, honor. Run. If it pursues you, embrace it gingerly, but only embrace it with trust in Hashem. And then I'll dwell in the house of Hashem. So this psalm has so much, it's just so gorgeous. And, so much that we don't have time necessarily for it all. I hope the message of the shepherd and the faithful shepherd got through, because I find that very vital to us in this time when we really struggle on who to trust and who to rely on. Most people don't have a live person to go to for advice. So we have to turn to our tzaddikim, and we have to turn to their advice, especially the advice of Rebbe Nachman, which is the advice of hitbodedut and talking to Hashem in personal prayer. And you can use Sefer Tehillim, and of course Reb Nassan's prayers, L'kutei Tefillah. You can use these as a jumping off point to your own personal prayer. You can start with a psalm and open your heart and go from there. Now, we're going to talk about the SEGULA of the Psalms, of this psalm first. I'm looking at the question. Yes, yes. So Naomi, go back and watch the beginning of the class where I talk about Psalms. Naomi asks, were these actually formulated as songs? If anybody wants to see, you can open your chat. There's a word that says chat underneath. When we do the group Tehillim reading today, if you want us to daven for anyone who needs a Refuah Sheleimah, you can list their names in the chat and we'll all take a look at that. But Naomi's asking, were the Tehillim of David and Melech actually formulated songs? Yes, and there's music to them, okay? And the music, okay, the music, some of it we had, some of it are lost, some of the music is lost. But what would happen is that David would be awakened by a breeze at night, and this breeze would make his harp, would strum knock the strings of his harp and would wake him. He would say Tikkun Chatzos and Chatzot. I'm sorry, I'm using my Ashkenaz accent, trying to keep the other accent in mind. He would say it, and he would also, at some point in the night, would also compose psalms at that time as well, along with music. So they all had music to them, and God willing, when the Beit HaMikdash is rebuilt in our day, we will be able to hear the correct music for the psalms, and we'll be able to enjoy listening to it with the choir of the Levium, who will sing in 72-part harmony. I can't even imagine how gorgeous that will be. I look forward to it. Okay. So the psalm is a SEGULA. It's said to make a statement of Emunah, but please keep in mind that it's also very much a statement of Bitachon, of trust. For more about the differences, we could talk about that another time. I think I have a class on it. I don't know. You can look it up. And I might have part of a class on it. But the idea is to keep in mind that when we need a boost to our Emunah and Bitachon, this is a good psalm to say. It's short, it's quick, and it's very powerful. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording, and we are going to say some Tehillim. If you would like to join us, I hope you will stay on. Hold on 1 second. Let me stop the recording. Oh, and we won't be meeting next week. We're going to have a little pre-Shavuot break, but God willing, we will return the Wednesday after Shavuot.